Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us, me today, and also us, all of us here. So today I'll be talking about the advantages of espresso tests, automation, how and why. And also before that, I think if you were here for Sagar's talk, that was a very great talk. If you missed it, please make sure you watch it online later. It was about profilers, something that we all definitely want to deal with in the future or check in the future. So yeah, I learned a lot. So I think our agenda today is going to be what is UI testing, Android UI testing automation, flakiness, which is something that we all deal with a lot when we are dealing with the UI test. And then I'll talk about the UI automator APIs. And then I'll talk about popular Android UI testing tools that we use. And then because we're talking about testing, I wanted to also touch a little bit on unit testing, just app, because I do know something that I realize is that most companies don't actually, I might be wrong about this, but most companies don't actually write like UI tests. Many concentrate more on unit tests because they make more sense. Because UI tests, like I've said, the flakiness issue is pretty big. It's pretty bothersome. And also, how about build time? Like if you're running UI tests and you're running unit tests, and either you're not scheduling them to run on a specific date, it might take forever to get that PR approved, especially if it's on a Friday. You know what I mean? Might be sitting there, you're like, I want to merge this, and then you merge, and then there's a problem. So definitely, there's a lot of issue with that. However, I've used Bitrise, which lets you schedule, and I remember my previous company, I did spearhead that scheduling where you can schedule your UI test to run on a particular date. It's not proof safe because sometimes people will merge broken tests because we all forget, right? But if it's scheduled, because it cannot run until the date it's scheduled, and we definitely used to run on the main branch, so that will be wait, we merged some failed tests because all of a sudden now, but we're trying to remove the bottleneck of us waiting for so long for this particular thing to build. And people want to move the work, if it's pretty needed pretty quick, we'll make sure you move fast. And then we'll talk about some CI/CD tools, and then conclusion. Oh, you're fine. So about me, I am an Android engineer. I've been doing this from 2014, and I think somebody did mention earlier that they've touched Android on Eclipse. I thought that was very funny. How many of us have done that using the Eclipse ID? Okay, we have new people, which is awesome. At least you did feel the pain. So the Eclipse ID, it's actually, if I'm not very confused, it's open source, and it was the first one before we had Android Studio, which is more stable now. But I mean, I wouldn't say anything bad about it because it really helped us back in the days. I'm also authoring a book. I'll talk about the book later. It's on modern Android 13. And then I'm also a Mintic Mix ambassador. There's more to that too. I just didn't want to add all the things that I do. Okay.
Let's have a big round of applause. Like,
Thank you. Okay. So what is UI testing, right? So this is one of the main questions that we ask ourselves. And in a pretty high, just maybe high level definition, it's just when you write tests to verify your UI is supposed to work the way it should work, right? For instance, we have a lot of use cases where you have two buttons and then you have, no, let me use just one button and you have, let's say, a login space, and then let's say you're taking a username and you're taking in a password. So when you're writing a UI test, you're definitely just verifying that whenever a user enters those particular things and clicks on the button, it responds the way it should respond, right? So sometimes you might be wondering why are they even important to think about UI testing, and that's what we will be looking into, and definitely talk about why it's important. So UI testing in every aspect of code we write today, you can argue that UI testing is not very important, and other people can argue unit tests are very much important. But I barely dwell in this particular argument because I'm always like, what? Look, it's also part of code, and we definitely do need to test it. And this is how we can actually verify that our application is working as expected and hitting the target that we need. Now, there are different approaches to UI testing, definitely there is the manual and automated. When I talk about the manual, this is just me taking my phone, going through like doing the like we've written the software, we have the software, we're running on our app, and I'm there just typing like okay, very fine, okay, yeah, I can enter a user, I can enter a password, and I can click the button, and it definitely goes through. The only problem with this though is that it's time consuming, it is not safe, and I mean, how many people can you get to do manual testing? I mean, we do have maybe the QA team that might use a couple of source labs that maybe we've not written any code for that, but how safe it is? How safe is it? So it's not very safe. Now, automated automated testing, however, does offer a lot of benefits. Benefits number one being you can schedule it. You can definitely have the back like the back end do this work for you. You can definitely, it's very proof safe, and it actually saves a lot of resources. And also, sure.
Also, I think it might not be exhaustive if you
Yeah.
do it manually, right?
Yeah, it's not exhausted when you do it manually too, because you just tested a few things, and you moved past it. And I remember back in the day, there was a company that was hiring me and was wanted to hire me in Florida. They told me they don't write any UI tests, and I was like, okay, it's not bad, but how do you verify that your
Yeah.
application is doing the functionality it should be doing? But you, like you mentioned, it's not very exhaustive. But automated testing definitely does offer a lot. And something that we as Android developers sometimes we don't talk about is how we can actually drive this particular, like, let me call it, approach where we are actually pioneers of good testing and actually even writing automated testing itself. I know it's tedious because it's like you're being the QA here, which can be pretty tough, but there are ways where you can definitely trigger the code to help in automated testing and make your code base even better. Because if it's if it's secure in a way that you don't keep getting bugs, or it doesn't keep crashing, I mean, it's safe for you, right? And it's also a big advantage to us as developers.
There's
Now,
also an online question from Jews Almighty. He
yeah,
asks, thought on Maestro, should newcomers start with Espresso?
good, good question. So I think I would say definitely yes, because I think that is the most powerful one that's being used, and I would definitely recommend starting with the espresso, because I feel like, especially for 102, that is the most used, and that is what most of us know about. So I would say yeah, espresso. Cool. Now, human testing, like I've talked about the manual testing, so that's the human testing. And then now let's talk about Android UI test automation. And here, like I'd mentioned, why automation? And as if you had this, a lot of benefits that you can actually get from writing automated test. And there is a great doc that I linked. I cannot see my, I wish it, because I linked a doc on my speaker note to showcase a big, let me see if I have it on my next slide. Oh yeah. Oh, it's not moving. Oh, there we go. Cool. I was like, wait a minute, maybe I didn't have it. Now, the pros are here. So automated software testing can increase the depth and scope of tests to help improve software quality. Lengthy tests that are often avoided during manual testing can be run unattended. Automated software testing can look inside an application and see memory content, data tables, file content, and internal program states to determine if the product is behaving as expected. I mean, if you compare this to the manual testing. Now, test automation can easily execute thousands of different complex test cases during every test run, providing coverage that is impossible with manual tests. So these are some of the pros that I thought about and why automation testing is pretty cool. And the scope. So as you can see here, there is a scope where we have integration testing, unit tests, and then end-to-end tests. If you're an Android engineer, because mostly this talk was catered for Android engineers, you know that we have the Android test package. When you open your Android IDE, we have the Android test package where is the UI tests go, and then we have where the unit tests go to the tests. I think it's called the test Android, where we write the unit test. Now, when we talk about the end to end, also I did link up a pretty good doc at the end where you can read more about end-to-end testing and integration tests, and also more about unit tests and what you should always look in scoping in your app. Yeah, the unit test suite basically. So when I talk about UI testing suites, this is where what are you scoping and what are you trying to test in your application. So this is the functionality, like I mentioned. You want to make sure that your application functions as it should, and also you want to make sure that the performance of your application is as expected, and also you want to make sure that the usability is as you plan it to be, and then also you want to make sure that the visual design is definitely as expected. And finally, you want to make sure that you test accessibility. And this is also a big topic by itself, where now you can actually automate accessibility, which actually reduces a lot of time from us as developers. Because as you know very well, if you're testing accessibility, you definitely need to walk step by step, like enabling accessibility and then being able to tap on those particular functions and making sure that your app is accessible. Because this is one of the things that as a developer, we need to be aware when we're developing our apps these days that we have to make sure that we support accessibility. So this is also a big topic that I would like to mention, that yes, when you're writing UI tests or automating your tests, make sure you have in mind accessibility and make sure that you automate that too. And it actually makes work easier, because I tried doing it manually. It was not easy. How many of us here have tried? I don't know if anybody has tried. Yeah, you how hard it was to just navigate. Yes, but it's very important to test it, because we need to make sure that we are being accessible. Now, so here I talked about test cases, and here I wanted to just show this particular pyramid on how the user actions, for instance, end to end is. And this can vary. Let's say start to finish, say logging into your account, accessing your profile and more, and maybe navigation, right? You want to make sure you test those particular functions. Now, progress bar, I mean, you have to make sure that your progress bar works as expected. And, a good example includes, a progress bar that is test verifies that the correct state is sent to the screen. Now, the data and field length. So this is ensuring that the correct data type is entered. For instance, integer instead of string. Also validate the field length and ensuring that users don't enter many characters. And I have a very funny story on this one. So I wrote an app, Budgeting Buddy, and it now has over 10,000 downloads. But the funny part is that I didn't write any UI tests. I know I was terrible in that. But my app kept crashing, and I kept seeing the logs on my Play Store, and I kept wondering, okay, what is this crash? And when I looked at it, people were entering like a very lengthy int, like I don't know if people are trying to just crash my app, trying to check if it's whether it's. So I realized, wait, I actually didn't test that we should only have a particular int in this section in this edit text. So people would enter, whoa, and then yeah,
Can you just explain like what kind of use case, like what kind of data user were entering?
an integer.
Yeah, but like for what purpose?
Yeah, so the idea was to enter a budget,
Okay.
and they
Okay.
were entering, let's say, the budget amount, which is maybe, let's say, you would say $10, but then somebody would enter maybe a million.
Million.
Yeah, so it's a long number,
Right.
and then it would crash the app.
Right.
Yes, so those are things that you need to be aware of. Also, it can happen where you're also having like a string, and people are entering, like, let's say, their name. If you don't cap it to a particular length, they can go all the way, and then that will definitely crash your app.
One of the requests from the online community is whenever someone is asking question from this robot, it would be great if you can repeat it because the microphone is not catching the balance.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Do you want to ask a question again?
Yeah. So I hope it's catching.
Oh, come closer.
Ah,
Oh, you can also come closer.
okay, sure.
I
I'll just come over there.
Yeah. It feels like it's a classroom. I like when it's yeah. You can ask over here, and also come to the camera. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can ask a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. So my question was like, what was the exact thing which was crashing the application? Like, what kind of data users were entering?
Yes, and I answered the question by saying it was a budget app, and user were entering the budget amount. Whereas, let's say if it's $10, they were entering $10, and then they would, instead of putting $10, they would put, like, let's say 1 million, and they would go all the way, and then my app would crash. And I had to go back and test that particular case, and then that stopped the crash. So just want to be aware that those are some of the test cases that you should always make sure that you capture early in advance in your application when you're building them. Now, frameworks that provides API for writing UI tests. And here I just want to mention, I wanted to mention a couple, and that is one we have, like we mentioned, the Espresso testing framework. We do have the Jetpack Compose testing APIs. How many of us here have heard about Jetpack Compose? Cool. And how many of us here have tried actually writing tests in Jetpack Compose? Can I you can come to the mic. I wanted to just ask, how have you found it so far? Because my experience is that I think writing tests for Compose has been made so much easier and simpler, and it's much understandable. So some of the concepts here might not apply if you're using the latest Jetpack Compose, but I wanted to cater for the people that are using a lot of, I mean, we still live in a legacy world where we have a lot of legacy code. So if you might be employed today, you might not even be working on a new feature. You might be maintaining the old code base because nobody wants to go back there and break what is already working. I doubt that's going to happen. So do you want to tell us your experience?
Oh
Or
yeah, for sure. I completely agree with whatever you have talked about Jetpack Compose. I feel like Google has done a really good job in breaking out the consistencies and developing a layout and measuring how functional validation can be applied to all of those layout rules, especially like the semantics tree in
Yeah.
Compose and everything. And that's the whole, like I would say, the fundamental of writing a Jetpack Compose UI test. So yeah, I definitely resonate with whatever you have said.
Exactly. And then I wanted to mention the UI automator. How many of us here, this is something that even I myself, I didn't know about the UI automator until I joined my company, and then we started talking more about automated tests. But I want to ask, how many of us here have experience with UI automators? Exactly.
Can you explain a little bit what is a UI automator?
Yeah, I'll get there.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, you're fine. How many of us here have heard about Roboelectric? We okay, few of us. We've definitely, some of us have definitely used it. Sometimes I know there's a lot of conversation about using Roboelectric, but I will not get to that one today because it's a topic by itself. Now, so here, sorry, let me go back to my. So here, as you can see, I had a graph too about instrumented versus a local test. And I want to talk about, let's say, an espresso sample test validation. And here I wanted us to just walk through, for instance, the code of how a sample validation of espresso would look like. And as you can see here, we have a code where we're saying a start progress bar is shown when it's loading. And wait, I think this is let me go back because that's a compose one. Let me see. Okay, yeah. So that's definitely a compose test, as you can see it. That's how they are easy today, where you can just definitely get a compose test rule, and then you set content, and then you have your content that you want. And if you're passing any state, you can check if it's loading is true, you verify that it's definitely displayed. There is more that you can do with this. This is just an example of what you can do and how the code looks like, for instance. Now, an XML validation code, this is for if you're still using XML, you might have seen this before, where we have, let's say, on view, you perform the text, and then you put whatever you want to put, let's say the input password, and then in the login, you perform click, and then you can have a wait until gone progress bar, and then for handling your maybe idling resources, and then definitely when it's successful, you do as displayed. And I chose the simple examples because I know these ones are easier to resonate with because I know the tests can get pretty complicated. But one thing that I've learned, and I also heard this from a distinguished engineer, and I do know sometimes in coding in Android, there's a lot of debate where you have to write your tests such that they cover a small part so that they're easily and manageable. And like if somebody comes into your workplace today and they took your role, it will be easy for them to understand, okay, this test was actually tested this part. And like having a very big, lengthy, particular block of tests that testing so many things such that it's so confusing. And then when you go change that particular code, it breaks the entire thing. So breaking your code, and that's what I've been practicing so far, like making the test, making sure that the test just covers small portion and where necessary. Now, I do have another one here. I know most of us definitely, I don't know, I've worked with RX myself. In my previous company, we had a lot of our, it was very painful. I'm not going to lie. RX is very, very painful for developers. There's a lot of learning curves, but if you've worked with it, this can be a sample of how like a you can emit something when you like, here I was trying to test. I was given an example of test emitting disconnecting state when the user with the registered user, and I gave an example of how you can actually time out, await, and assert the value. And like I said, RX is a pretty heavy learning curve, and definitely you would need to get to the ins and out of testing in RX. Now, I wanted, so here, I think, so again in RX, there's the use test method to get a test observer. You can make assertions on, let's say, await completion, assert count of value emitted, assert sequence and item expected, assert a timeout, did not, assert an expected error was raised. So just simple examples of what you can leverage when you're testing in RX. Now, there's definitely a lot of setup that goes behind, and that is, for instance, you can see this particular class. We do have
Is the camera turned on?
yeah, the
Someone
camera is yeah, the camera is on here.
Um,
Oh wait, is it?
yeah, click on the arrow over here.
No, that's the
No,
stop
no,
share.
this no.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, can you click the?
Oh, the webcam. It's not showing. Is it showing now?
I don't think so.
Maybe it's a technical issue.
That's fine. We can go ahead. Yeah, technical issues.
Yeah, because I mean it's on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this
Yeah,
one
that's
here
fine.
is on. It's better.
Yeah.
Sometimes it adds up. Okay. Cool. So I was giving an example. If you've written tests, definitely you need to make sure that you do the setup, and the setup can actually vary based on what you're trying to target. And as you can see in this particular class, had a screen
Yes, we
unit.
can see your slides, Madonna.
Not camera.
Oh, and camera. Can you see the camera? No, she's not responding. Okay, but we can continue. This is a simple test setup, and I wanted to
No,
actually
the
highlight.
camera, we cannot see it. No, we cannot see your camera.
Okay, I don't know how to troubleshoot that. Um, just give us one moment.
You can use a default cam, a FaceTime HD camera.
Do you think maybe it's the mirroring? Let me check. Hmm. Let's see. Maybe I need to refresh it. Let me try.
Yeah.
Reload. It's
Yes, we can see it now.
yeah. It's all sometimes the browser
Nice.
gets hung up. Okay, let me go back to sharing again. And then I need to come here and put full screen right here. There we go. And then I do apologize for that. Oh, am I sharing my screen?
No.
Oh no.
No, it's
Sorry.
It's a 10-second.
Okay, but I think I should share it. You can see my screen?
Not yet.
I think it's behind, right?
All
No,
Almost. Okay. Can you see it now? I mean, I can see it on my side.
I can see it in the backstage, but not in the main stage. Oh, okay, okay. There is a delay. Okay.
There's a 10-second
Take some
delay.
pictures. And it's not that they don't have a camera person. Yeah. Okay, you can see it now? Okay, we can go on.
Yes, we.
Oh, thank you. I also want to thank you all for your patience. Thank you very much. And also thank you for coming. I definitely appreciate that. Now, so instrumentation and instrumentation registry are low-level APIs, and they're typically used by higher level test frameworks, and it's generally not recommended for direct use by most tests. But on your free time, what I normally do is I always go in that particular class and dig inside it and just check what it does and what it's about. Now, as you can see there, we have a very simple rule, and rules also. This is something also that I learned the other day that I've never actually done, but our staff engineer actually offered some knowledge. I did realize that you can actually order rules, like you can say this is the first rule, this is the second rule, this is the third rule. Wait, people are shaking their heads. You've done that?
No,
That's
listening
cool.
to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was pretty cool. Because I always thought you can only just define the rules and you can only have just one rule. But definitely you can have different sets of rule where you can say, okay, this is our first rule, and this will be our second rule, and this one will be our third rule. And then the test will definitely know that this is the order of operation that will be executing those particular rules. Now, one thing that I always want to mention to you is that take advantage of long names when you're writing your test. And this is just for clarity. Because one thing that I notice is that sometimes when you're writing tests, it might not be very clear what exactly you're testing. But when you think of it like, okay, when user wants to exit, make sure they can exit without holding data. I mean, if somebody comes into your code base, they'll be like, oh, okay, this one is clear. I mean, because I think there's no to, okay, I don't know what happened.
You can see that, like,
Hold on, it's a
no,
delay.
it's
So,
already.
It's a delay. Oh, something happened to the, yeah.
can you click on next?
Huh?
Like, if you like to the slide, I can still view it.
You can still see it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but as we cannot see it there in the room, it looks like this thing crashed.
I think that's an extension of your desktop. Like,
Yeah, that might be second speed.
yeah.
Uh,
Just go like this.
Yeah, you can reconnect from here.
yeah, because it looks like that's
Mm.
that's the one that really
Yeah.
it started doing the blue. See. Sorry, everybody.
it's
Technical
okay.
difficulties.
It's okay.
Okay. Oh, it's loading.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I need to reshare again. Hmm. But how do I? When I thought.
So go like this. Maybe you have a different desktop. Just go like this.
Oh, okay. Like this, right?
No.
Desktop. Okay.
3 fingers from
Yeah.
here.
Go up top. Maybe you have no. It's only one desktop.
It's only one, right?
Yeah.
That's weird too. Okay. Sorry, everybody online. I'm gonna stop sharing and share again, and just make sure that I have the right thing coming up, because it was there. I don't know why I killed it. Okay.
Yeah, stop sharing.
Yeah, I had to stop because it's not displaying over there. Okay. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go slides. I'm gonna go here to slides. I'm gonna share presenter view. I'm gonna come here. Let me see. Yeah, okay, that one brings it there now. But then I think I need to scoop this one out and bring it back here. And then come back here. There we go. And make that bigger. And then here, I talk to myself when I'm doing stuff.
We all do.
Yeah.
We all do. Are you sure?
Yeah.
That's right again.
Oh, yeah. Okay, it's having an issue then. Looks like that's the one that has an issue. Oh,
There we go.
interesting. Okay.
My hands.
Coming up.
Okay, so we're gonna have to go. Bam, 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 bam. Sorry about that, everybody. So we were here. We were here. Okay, so we were here. Taking advantage of long names in Kotlin. Now, I had another example of how you can, let's say, verify navigation. And this is just through, as you can see there, I have this particular launch fragment held container. And this is because mostly if you're using Android and you have, let's say, a fragment, you definitely do need to use, and also to mention, if you're using dependency injection and you're using held in this particular instance, you have to use that. And then you pass in your type as a login, as a fragment. For instance, mine was a login fragment. And then you can create a nav controller and set the nav controller property on the fragment. And then definitely you can navigate. That's just a simple code of how you can. And I added this particular section because somebody had a question about how they can actually do navigation. But also there's great resources out there on how you can write great tests on navigation. Now, I want to talk about flakiness because I don't want us to run out of time. So flakiness is something that we all experience. And as you've noticed here, we click a button, right? And then something is happening, like there's the idling, we are waiting for something to definitely happen. There is where we can get something idling. And we assert success later, right? Once we are done. But how do you handle that? One thing that I wanted to mention is there is this thing of where you can actually await, or you can do. I've seen people do that before. That is, it's called you can run it on a thread, but you can say handler.wait, sorry. But that is not highly recommended because sometimes it might cause issues. So for Jetpack Compose, there's a new push to actually use wait until. If most of us here have written tests in Jetpack Compose, and for this particular instance, for instance, the asynchronous nature of mobile application and frameworks, let's say, often makes it challenging to write reliable and repeatable tests. And let's say when you inject an event and the testing framework doesn't understand what exactly you're trying to do, it might be hanging there. So what are the best way to do? I know this is what I said you should not use, but I'm saying you should use it. But like I mentioned, in Jetpack Compose, there's better ways of actually handling this because they actually recommend it, but I've seen a big discussion on that too. But you can actually wait for a few seconds, like click a button, wait a few seconds, and then definitely it will happen. One thing that I also want to mention too is that when you're doing this particular action, you can use the island resources that are already provided for us. I think it's a class that you can use to wait on it. But to be fair, this is a very also interesting topic because it has not solved our problems, because sometimes we have that code there, but sometimes you find that our CI doesn't understand, or something just happens and then it was pretty okay, but then all of a sudden it's failing. Like it passes a few days and then all of a sudden now it stopped. So I don't think we have like a great solution yet to how to handle resources. That's what I would say. It's in my opinion, but I have tried the one that we have at Jetpack Compose, and so far I've not seen any issues. So if you're writing new UI tests, I would highly recommend, if you're writing new features, definitely go with Jetpack Compose because it has proven that it's definitely, I'm not marketing Jetpack Compose, but I think it has made our lives as developer much easier as compared to the old way, which is definitely bringing more issues. Now, I wanted to talk about now the UI automator. I think there's a question about that. And first, let's look at the APIs. Now, the UI automator is a UI testing framework suitable for cross apps function UI testing across system and installed app. Now, as you can see there, you can write automate tests with the UI automator. That is, distributed best API works with the Android JUnit runner. You can retrieve state information and perform operation on the target device, and APIs that support cross-app UI testing. Now, this by itself is a very big topic, and you will see in sample codes like how you can actually utilize the UI automator. And one advantage of UI automator, it lets you interact with visible element on a device, regardless of which activity is in focus. It also allows you to perform operations such as like opening the setting menu or the app launching a test device. You can test lookup, you can test lookup like a UI component by using convenient descriptors such as text displayed in that component or its content description. So as you can tell, it definitely does have a lot of advantages. This is just you writing tests and then telling this UI automator, okay, perform all these things for me. Now, so as you can see here, we have a big advantage where you can say, I'm trying to press a hardware key, such as a volume. You press the back, home, or menu button, and then you can take a screenshot of the current window or change the device rotation. You can all get this. Like the UI Automator lets you do this, and it does provide this with a like a class. I think it's called the UI device class that performs the operation on the device, which is super cool. Now, this is a simple example now, where we have the following codes that shows how you can write a test script that displays the default app launcher in the device. Now let's look at the UI device class. As you can see, it gets an instance, and then it uses the instrumentation. And as you see there, we have device.press home. Now you can bring up the default launcher by searching for a UI component that matches the content description for the launcher button. As you can see there, we have a button, and that's the UI object. And then you can find the object, and then you can use a UI selector and you describe your app. And then what you can do, you can perform a click on the button to load the launcher. Now, I know all this sounds a little bit foreign if you've not used it like in person, like writing the code itself. But I think many of the QA teams definitely do utilize the UI automator for companies, and that's why I learned about it, because I was like, wait, there's something that actually does this for us, because I've never used it myself. And then I think later on a later slide, I will also showcase the differences between or the advantages of using UI Automator and actually using Espresso. Now, as you can see here, we also have a cancel button where you get the UI object, and you see in the code there, we are getting the widget, which is the button, and then we have that particular OK button that gets that, and then you can say if OK button.exists and that one exists, you do that. But I'm going to show you another simple code that I had that was very fine. Let's say addition, which is what normally would resonate a lot with us here. Just a simple example, but definitely this code base, I was just trying to show simple examples. So as a best practice when specifying a selectum, you should use a resource ID if one is assigned to a UI element instead of a text element or a content descriptor. Not all elements have a text element, for instance, like icons in a toolbar. And then when you have text selectors, they can be brittle sometime, and they can lead to test failures. So making sure that you define the particular function you want to do can be very grateful. Now, something else that I also want to mention is that the UI object itself, it has many things that you can call. You can call click, you can call drag to, set text, you can do swipe left. So there's a lot of documentation on actually what you can leverage on this. And if you notice, they don't look very different to your normal espresso test that we write. It's just that now this one's, they're actually accessing, like they are playing around with the, how can I put it? It's like you're writing a test that will run on this particular device for you and perform all these actions for you. Like you're just sitting there on the background, just waiting for all these things to be done, which is pretty powerful because then it means, oh, I don't think you might be very secure, but you will feel secure because you're verifying that the things you want to verify, they're taking action and they're working as they should be. No, you get. Now, this is what I wanted to showcase. This, I think this one is pretty easier to understand. So as you can see there, we have enter an equation. Let's say, for instance, we have 10 plus 6, which will be equals to 10, right? So we can have, so the only problem with this too, I found out that the way we used to say Java had a lot of boilerplate code. I feel like this is the same situation because as you see, we definitely do have a lot. We need to get the package name and then get the app package, the package you're trying to test. And then we pass in the resource ID. Let's say, for instance, here it's 10 plus 6. And then we definitely also have an equals. We're writing like the entire process and then telling we assert the verification to be 16. And then that will return true. But it definitely reduces the work, but there's a lot of work to be done. Now, I had to bring this. I got this one when I was doing this particular investigation. I got a lot of resources from Stack Overflow. And here we have a great example of, if you're confused about UI Automator and Espresso, let me now try to unconfuse you. Now, some of the, so as you can see there, it says UI Automator and Espresso use the same instrumentation runner. The UI Automator is powerful and has good external OS system integration. E.g. can turn Wi-Fi on and Wi-Fi and off and access other settings during tests, but lacks backward compatibility as it requires maybe Jelly Beans or higher. Now, Espresso is a bit more lightweight compared to UI Automator and supports 2.2 Froyo and app. It also has a fluent API with powerful Hamcrest integration, making code more readable and extensible. It is newer than UI Automator. As you've noticed, the previous code looked very complicated, right? As compared to Espresso, which looked way more better. But I had not known about UI Automator before, and I'd never used it before. And I imagine you joined a company and found them using that. Why does that keep happening? Is it?
You can reconnect it and share.
Huh.
Does it have a timeout?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
It
Looks like it has a
seems-
timeout.
Looks like.
Oh no. Okay. Sorry, everybody. We went through the timeout thing again. I'm going to reshare again. Apologies about that. But that's interesting. Oh, let me see.
We reshare.
Yeah, I thought it should be easier to reshare, right? Okay, so I think we're almost.
No.
Okay, I think we're almost done too. Okay, let me. Oh, yeah, we're here. Mm,
Yeah.
All right. But
So I think it's having timeout.
So it's having a timeout.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we know it's having a timeout,
Yeah.
and we definitely need to be careful about the timeout. We didn't know it has a timeout. They should have told us there's a timeout.
Yeah.
So maybe keep clicking on it until it doesn't time out. Because we're almost done.
Yeah.
Okay, so those were the examples I was given. And then now, let's talk about popular Android UI testing tools. So we have a couple, which is the Espresso, like I mentioned. We have the Calabash, if people have heard of Calabash. We have UI Automator. We have the Detox. And we have Monkey or App Crawler. This is also pretty new. I think if you go to the Google.Android, you'll see about Monkey and App Crawler. So one that you can actually try to see if will work well with your company. And then the more popularly most used Espresso, like I've mentioned here, is a famous UI testing framework. It supports Android application from 2.0 onward and requires access to the source code, and also has a white box testing feature, which is pretty cool. And some great advantages of using Espresso is it's fast and reliable. It can test web component, built-in test recorder, active service and team. It does testing in such a way that components are isolated, and this makes other activities and components available to work with. And some disadvantages, it runs only on running one application at a time. Tests can only be for Android. So if you're not an Android person, sorry, test cases are only written in either Java or Kotlin, and deep understanding is required. However, on that section, I wanted to add there is a pretty amazing cheat sheet for that particular section where you can just go and look for Espresso cheat sheet and you'll find great resources. Calabash is one of the open source and free cross-platform UI testing tool. It works efficiently with .NET, Java, Ruby, and other languages. It tests native and hybrid applications. And I wanted to mention this because I know we might have some Flutter devs or React dev or even other devs that actually build Android but use not like Kotlin or Java. Now, let me see. So the monkey, I did link the doc there where you can find that information. So monkey is a program that actually runs on your emulator or device and generates pseudo-random streams of user events such as clicks, touch, or gestures, as well as a number of system-level events. You can use the monkey to stress test application that you're developing in a random yet repeatable manner. So you can actually take advantage of this too. I found it to be pretty interesting. I've not used it myself, but I think it's something that might really be helpful if your company doesn't want to invest more, let's say in either hiring QA, and you don't want to keep fighting with the bugs, even though I know that is asking so much because you already have so much to fix in Android all the time. And then app crawler. Let me go back here. App crawler, just uses app crawl tool, part of Jetpack actually, to automatically test your app without the need to write or maintain any code. So the crawler runs alongside your app, automatically issuing action like type, swipe, etc. to explore the state space of your app and a lot more. So if you want to read more about the monkey and app crawler, which I think that one is part of Jetpack, sorry, it's good to look into it. Now, like I mentioned before in my agenda, it's not good to touch on UI tests without touching a little bit on unit tests because I think they're also very important to write. And I find them the easiest actually to write and maintain because maintaining UI tests to me has been very, very difficult, not very easy. But UI tests are pretty important. As you can see here, test small units of code to validate their behavior, promote good design, loose coupling. It avoids fragile code base, promotes sustainable growth of the project, and some guideline. I know there's a lot of controversy over what is fakes and mocks. So some guideline to strive for are: do not alter global state or reset it if you must. Avoid flakiness in other tests. Should not communicate with the external system. You can do fakes or mocks. Server call especially because that can overweigh your servers. And then view models. If most of us here definitely have used the MVVM pattern, or if you've not used the MVVM, we know we have the MVI and the MVP. I don't know if anybody uses MVC anymore. Feels like MVC now. Anybody use MVC? No, yeah, it feels like it's done. Yeah. And then, so here, I know that particular bullet point had a lot of discussion about do not test private methods, just public interfaces. Okay, code to an interface. So following I think if you've heard of solid principles, just ensure that you use the interface, because I found actually having the interface is much easier to test because you just write your code and then you just use the interfaces to write your test, which is way easier to validate. And then unit tests run very fast. If you run a unit test, you can write like two. We had like 1,000 of them, and then they run with 8 seconds, and I'm so happy. But then the UI test, I don't know.
Yeah, compared to your test,
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah. And then the CI/CD tools that I've used, I just wanted to mention definitely we've used Bitrise. There's also CICR, Circle CI, GitHub Action, Travis, Jenkins. So for anybody that I've heard about those. So Bitrise, I felt like I was, what is it called? Like supporting them. But I do love Bitrise so far. I found it to be pretty useful. I know many people are moving to it, but That's what I would say about it there. It's pretty good. It really does help reduce like our time and helps us a lot. And I've given some advantage of it. And I actually talk more about testing on my book. That is my new book that's coming up. It's available to pre-order actually, which is super cool.
Wow.
And that's it. I do apologize for what is it called? The technical difficulties.
Do we have a time?
Huh?
Do you have a time for Q&A?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Let me actually check on my side too.
Start with a few warm-up exercises.
No, you're kidding. I think I've been sitting for long. Okay. Okay, let me see. They were answered.
There are no questions on.
Okay. So yeah, now it's open for questions. I know UI testing is like even Saga mentioned, not many talks even cater a lot to UI tests because it's a very broad topic to cover, and there's so much to learn in UI testing, and also the problem, especially the problem with the flakiness, is also. I saw a very big article about how we need to stop pushing for idling resources. I don't know how that issue can be handled, but it's definitely a pain because sometimes we've seen that a couple of times also. Like you run your code and then all of a sudden it's passing locally, but then you push it up there, it's failing all of a sudden, and it's the flakiness really does hurt our time because it really strains our developers' bandwidth.
We definitely agree that we need more resources on UI testing.
Yeah.
Because I think the backend testing and test cases are very much evolved compared
Yeah.
to these,
Mhm.
and definitely need a lot more work and research into these field to evolve them and make them at par with the unit test case and backend test cases that are going on.
Yeah. I mean, I wish they made UI tests as easy as unit tests are.
As you, yeah. But good thing is now people are realizing the importance of those and now it's picking up. So
Yeah.
So like earlier, I used to know about the automated test. What I used to do is like I used to have the sample data in the text view written over there, and then I used to automate the stuff programmatically. And so my
Nice.
specific question was
Yeah.
like I shipped the application like having few 100,000 premium users
Yeah.
in especially in security domain.
Mhm.
And if you talk about the competitive markets like in India,
Yeah.
like here, like the developed country, they have the good pixels and all the native Android phones. But if it comes to India and all
Oh,
those
yeah.
markets, they have this phones, especially from the Xiaomi or the third party manufacturer. And
Oh,
let's say,
wow.
like, I'll just tell you one use case from our application.
Yeah.
Like, our app, like, basically, we use the total security suite. So, like, we
Mhm.
needed the uh, admin permission, the all the necessary permissions.
Yeah.
So, what used to actually happen is if you take the example of Xiaomi device, then
Mhm.
giving the permission for the Xiaomi is entirely different.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we had to dig the libraries of the Xiaomi's to actually decrease the drop off rates
Yeah.
in the application.
Yeah.
In case of Mango devices, it's different. In case of Samsung, it is different. So are there any or and we actually tried to automate that process by taking the access of accessibility so that
Yeah.
we can save a lot of time.
Mhm.
But again, it's not practically possible for every small organization. So like, do
Yeah.
you know any kind of set of tools because for such diverse set of OEMs we can talk about to automate the UI test on diverse set of OEMs?
That's a very good question because I feel like something that we don't talk about much is how we have so many devices in Android,
Exactly.
and I feel like the pain point actually comes into where you're developing for your Samsung will work, a Pixel
Yeah,
will work,
exactly.
but then a different phone,
No.
which is actually what is mostly used in the other part of the world, will not work.
Exactly.
So that's a very good point. And to be fair and sincere, I don't think I know the answer to that question because I've never thought, because I think currently so what I think we've done is our app is limited, let's say, to the US and to the people around here because it's cannot be used, but you used by other people from the US. But you're right. If your app is used by the worldwide community, how do you solve that particular problem? Because it is a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it takes a lot of time of developer by
Yeah.
manually giving out permission for every install.
Yeah.
And like if we want to automate, then there is accessibility. But again, accessibility setting, they have those kind of
Oh,
limitations.
yes. Yeah. It's like I was asking Sagar here about his previous talk where you're dealing with memory leaks from a that party library. Like,
Third
how
party
do you
library.
even fix that
Exactly.
to begin with? because it's their library. You can't go
Yeah.
there unless now, like you mentioned, you reach out to them and ask them, "Hey, you have a memory leak. Hey, do you mind fixing it?" And they'll be like,
Yeah.
"Maybe we don't even want to fix it."
The best thing is if they are open source on completely on GitHub or something like that, then we
Yeah.
can actually have some kind of PR, so it will help community.
Yeah, but most of them they've locked their stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's a very good question. Thank you for answering that.
But
So I would that yeah, based on and I don't know how Google plans on consolidating that
Mhm.
particular kind of like bottlenecks. That is a pain
Mhm.
point
Mhm.
where we can definitely. But since I'm a GDE, I can bring back that
Yeah,
new
exactly. I would
information.
love if you
Yeah,
can just feed forward my feedback, because that
definitely.
will solve a lot of developers issues and problems.
Write me that question. I will
Yeah,
ping them
definitely I
back.
will.
Yeah, because that's part of being a GDE. You can
Yeah,
because
thank you.
I have direct contact to the person that
Awesome,
handled the
awesome.
GDE, and maybe they can ask the people back there, like, how can we solve this problem?
We have got one last question from online.
Sure. Uh, let me see. Where do you see the questions from?
Q&A. Let me see.
No, I don't see them here. But you can read it
Oh
for
yeah.
me.
Okay. Yeah. The
Isn't it
question
Mike?
is.
Oh yeah, the mic. Here.
That's it.
Get the mic. Are we online or?
Yeah, we are online.
Oh, okay.
The question is, if we could like to test a compose UI function as automated, how can we do? And which parameters should not be in the function, such as should the function not take view model as parameter like that?
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure.
Mhm.
If we would like to test a compose UI function as automated,
Yeah.
how can we do so? And which parameters should be in the functions and which should not be, such as like if view model can be taken as a parameter or some guidelines involving that?
Yeah. So first of all, the view model. I think you will agree with me that view models are better as unit tests. So you can definitely isolate, and that's why the work of the view model is to make unit tests, right? So definitely that's the first part where make sure that you're not writing view model tests in your Android UI test, like in that class. You don't want to put because it has its own specific area where it should live, and that's what makes it much easier. And you will notice that when you're writing the view model tests, they run very fast too when they're in the unit test. I've not ever, I don't know even about anyone from Novasi have made them as a Android test. Now, for automated tests in, for instance, now Jetpack Compose, we've seen that that app crawler. It does say it's part of the Jetpack. I've not played around with it, but I think definitely when you dig deep into that, as you can see, it offers some of the like automation advantages. So definitely, I would recommend looking into the app crawler and seeing how the app crawler can benefit you in automating Jetpack Compose stuff. Because if it's part of Jetpack, I believe that's maybe the initial intent for it to be used. So, but please make sure your view models stay to the unit tests because then it will be long, it will take long again. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
I hope that answered it. Any other question? Or, or even a discussion or recommendation? Sure, go.
Are there ways in these frameworks to be able to, this is kind of going off your question.
Yeah.
Basically, the accessibility of like devices around the world, right?
Yeah.
They operate at maybe different network speeds,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So when you like, are there ways in these frameworks to like, I don't know, be able to throttle and engage, like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a
engage
very
the
good
devices
question too.
that
Yeah.
you-
To be fair, I'm not even aware that because the way I think about it, like you've mentioned, if you have to turn off that setting automatically, that's definitely a pain point by itself, right?
Mhm.
Because it means that it won't work there.
Mhm.
And based on that itself, I think maybe it's for the Google people to kind of like make sure that this particular framework that they have support all the app system, which can be very hard actually when you think about it, because that means working with all the people that develop phones and
Yeah.
use the Android OS.
Yeah, so I would just like to add one point.
Yeah.
The solution of all these problems are for technically advanced people like the rooted. Like in my case, like I dig deeper into Android, I root all the devices. Like I have till now, I have rooted more than like 80 plus devices. So from every manufacturer,
Yeah.
once you get the root permission by using expose and a lot of modules, you can automate everything. This is the way I used to like I was able to save a lot of time of developer, because unless but if you talk about the common people, a lot of people don't know what is routing or what is getting the super zoo access and like all the magic and all those things.
Yeah.
If you are able to get that, then at least in your alpha or beta or your internal releases, you can automate 100% of the stuff.
Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, routing definitely can help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for the internal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, like again, if you remove the root permission,
Mhm.
you have to do the manual testing, because again, it can break a lot of things internally
Yeah.
if you talk about the production application.
That's true. Thank you for bringing that experience, because I've
Thank
not
you.
had to deal with but I can imagine the
Yeah.
only issue we had was the the note tabs.
Hmm.
Our
Galaxy
app,
Note?
yeah, the Galaxy Note tabs. Our app was not working there for all of them, which is very weird. But they work on all the other Samsungs.
Oh, like, can I ask another question? Like,
Sure.
like, did you try on One UI or the previous One UI by the Samsung, the latest one, or the previous models?
That was it was a tab. It was a Samsung Tab A's, and I think different versions.
Yeah, okay.
So they weren't
Because
working.
recently they have launched the One UI and that they have made a little bit better things for the developer, but
Ah.
previously it was not.
Yeah, that one it didn't work. So what we had to do, we had to like manually,
Manually, yeah.
exclude, like say when we have this particular Samsung Tab A's, and then we had to list all of them.
Right.
That was very hectic. So I had to go like Google all the Samsung Tab A's in the list, and then I had
Right.
to put them in an if statement.
Right.
I know that was not clean, but gotta do what we gotta do. Yeah. So thank you very much,
Yeah,
everybody.
thank you.
It was such an honor.